Alright, here we are. For some reason, a version of 2.0 Cherryh has arrived on my shores. Thank you so much for from Paradox to basically make this press version available to me for all of you to enjoy on this dusty old Monday. I have returned from a bright, and also very cold Korea to bring you the patch notes for 1.9 to 2.0. Now, I've got a nifty little setup here. I can switch between 1.9 and 2.0, basically to take a look at what differences we have in front of us and basically say, hey, these are the differences between our different versions. So, first of all, let's go and talk about the free features that come with Cherryh, and for that we need to look at the 1.9 build and basically take a look at our empires and what they actually do. Now, first of all, the FTL rework is kind of important. If we go here in 1.9, you will see that there is obviously 3 different types of FTL method available. In 2.0, however, this has now changed to the following. There is no more FTL available in the actual menu. You will always start with hyperdrive. So wormhole travel and warp travel are no longer available as FTL types at the start of the game and have been changed into additional and different forms of FTL. So first of all, we're going to stay here with our good friends over in Apocalypse as well as Cherryh. We're going to go and take a look at the new modes of FTL. So let's quickly observe, see where we are at. So one thing that is here is a wormhole that is new, and as we click on it, we will automatically go back and forth to where it is. Basically, this allows for new areas to go between. So, for instance, this wormhole connects all the way down to the wormhole down in here. A very interesting change, obviously. I'm really curious how this is going to change the mechanics within the context of the game. As right now, we're just literally bouncing back and forth across the galaxy. So wormholes always come in pairs. You can change the amount of wormholes that spawn at the start of the game, so that is definitely there. So yeah, FTL completely overhauled in 2.0 comparatively to 1.9. And it's very, I know this has been a very polarizing subject, and a lot of people are not particularly happy with it, and I can understand that there are some people that are not very, don't find this very enjoyable because they came into the game saying, hey, I want to play with warp, I want to play with wormhole drive, that sort of thing. But that's sadly no longer the case. Gates, we will talk about those actually. Let's tag back into our empire. I am not going to turn it off this time around because of the way stuff works. Let's just survey everything. Yeah, that's fine. We will now make first contact with like a bunch of aliens, and we should be able to build a megastructure, which is a gateway site. And we can obviously only build that within the context of our borders. So let's just quickly pop back in and build a megastructure. Cannot build a megastructure inside the gravity well of a system. Fascinating. So basically what this does is it builds a megastructure that is basically similar to the wormholes, and you can build a gate network within your empire, which is rather cool to say the least, which is something that you want to keep in mind while playing around with FTL. So the reason why they changed this between 1.9 and 2.0 is just so we can have a more interesting late game. Apparently, the different types of FTLs cause serious problems with the way the game is designed, and building new features around it is gonna be a lot easier and a lot more creative this way. At least that's according to the devs. Let's talk a little bit about jump drives. They are new as well. I've got this fleet here. Let's see if we can jump over. Let's take a look here. Do I have a jump drive on here? Yes, I do. Let's see if I can actually move here. So we have there should be a jump drive button here. No, there. Okay, where is it? Home station. Ah, there it is. Initiate jump. Order selected jump drive. Equip fleets to make a jump to selected system. So we can then basically jump there. So let's take a look if this is going to work or not. Ignore the giant Colossus over there. Come on. Take the jump. We're just waiting for them to get to the edge of the system. And these are, of course, important. I try to do as much prep as I possibly could when it comes to these, to this particular death diary. Okay, here we go. And it did not jump. Interesting. Okay, so let's take a look. So jump to here. There we go. Okay, so we need to individually select that. So we're jumping. And we have jumped. So we're now in the other system. Jump drive is now on cooldown, and while jump drive is recharging, weapon damage and sublight speed have been reduced. Now we'll take a look at what the actual range of the jump drive is in a dedicated video. But yeah, that's an idea of what you can expect there. Stations have completely changed. So let's, for the sake of fun, go back to our other game. Let's go to the High Terran Empire, shall we? So let's quickly load in here. So classically in 1.9, what would happen is you would have your stations. You would have a orbital construct. For some reason, this is oh god, good lord, it's completely broken for some reason. I'm not entirely sure what's going on here. Anyway, so yeah, basically you would have your standard outposts, and they would do all their stuff there. In 2.0, this is now changed to the following. So every single system, you can build a shipyard, which is sitting over here, and every single shipyard has its own features. Now, the planet does no longer have its station. The shipyard will orbit the star of choice and can be upgraded in various ways. For instance, right now, this one has a FTL cannon, a bunch of defenses around it, as well as a ion cannon right here. So we'll actually take a look at that later when it comes to our super heavy weapons. That's at least it. So system ownership is now determined by who controls the system, or at least the starbase inside of it. And every single system can have different stuff in it. So for instance, if we send our construction ship out, build a starbase here, it costs us influence to build the starbase. If you're worried about influence, there's a bunch of different systems that are no longer require influence, and we'll go into that a little bit deeper later on. So for instance, this construction ship now goes out. Let's speed up the process here. Looks like Fleet Logistician is still the garbage trait that you never want to pick on your Admiral. So we have a pulsar system. Shields are no longer usable in this system, obviously. Let's just build this. And there you go. So we've now built an outpost. We could potentially upgrade this starbase if you want to, but it claims the territory for us. And it can go into 5 different levels, from outposts to citadels, and starbases have different module slots based on the amount of stuff they have available. So for instance, the starport, if we upgrade this, now 2 slots become available plus a building. We will go over the building separately in a separate video. Star Fortress and Citadel, and finally the Citadel. So there you go. So new starbase right there. And this is a starbase, obviously set up for different things. So we can, for instance, build a fleet yard here. So, for instance, if we have a shipyard, we build it in here, it automatically moves to the shipyard category, and we can now build multiple ships in queue. So, for instance, we can build another shipyard here, and another shipyard, and another shipyard. What this means is that we can now...
Alien Empire has established communications.
Alien scum. So what this means is we can now build several ships in parallel with each other. So what we can do here is all of these 3, considering we have 4 shipyards, these 4 destroyers will come out of the production queue first, and there's now a prioritization list there as well, which is really nice. You know, it makes life really, really easy for you. In the past, fleets were kind of interesting. So let's quickly pop back to the old game here. It's the 1.9. So back into 1.9. As you can see, the fleet here right here is looking pretty decent. It's got a bunch of ships on it. But the fleet cap is 100. You can 500. You can never have more than 500 ships in your fleet. This has now been changed in 2.0. So if we go in here to our fleet, we can see that we've got a fleet size cap on top of it. So based on the amount of technology that we have, we can add additional stuff to our fleet, and every single item has a weight. So destroyers weigh 2, cruisers weigh 4, battleships weigh 8, Titan in this particular case weighs 16, and that all adds up to a 116. And you can you need to build multiple fleets to take care of all this stuff. So that is definitely something you want to keep in the back of your head. So expect a lot more smaller fleets to be moving around. Let's just get this Titan out of the way right here. Okay, and also let's not go into a pulsar system because it's really, really, really too loud. So, Ascension Perks. Let's pop back into 1.9. So, Ascension Perks, in the past, Ascension Perks in the past, they would work by unlocking Utopia. And you would get a bunch of technologies, Ascensions in place for it. So you've got all your classic stuff that you would all know and love. In 2.0, however, we got a couple of additionals being added here. So, for instance, the Colossus project, Executive Vigor, Enigmatic Engineering, and Nihilistic Acquisition, which allows for raiding bombardment stance, and we're going to talk about that a little bit soon. However, if you have Utopia, you will get access to a lot of these right off the bat, and I have said in the past that this would be a good thing to have, and that's really nice to see that Paradox is basically allowing people to get access to the Ascension perk system, because it caused more problems than it solved. Basically, the expansion, Synthetic Dawn, added a Ascension perk, which was specifically for that, for the Ascension perk system, but you couldn't access the Ascension perk if you didn't own Utopia. So that didn't make any sense. So they now changed that system, thankfully. So that's really, really nice. Armies have been reworked. I haven't actually managed to play around with armies all that much. So let's get these armies here. So where is the armies here? Okay, so we've recruited these. Okay, there they are. So they're down in here. They automatically go into space. I don't think we can... Oh, we can land them. Okay, that's nice. So armies now work a little bit different than they did before. So attachments are no longer in the game. If we quickly pause, go back into 1.9, and if we take a look at our attachments on our robots, if we click on one of our armies, we get this little menu here. We can assign a leader if we want to, and add an attachment. There were a bunch of them, and they all have been removed from the game. In 2.0, armies work a little bit differently. So, as you can see, if we take a look at our army here, so the Assault Legion, we can click them. They go automatically into orbit. We can still attach a leader to them if we really want to, but a whole bunch of stuff has been added here. So, for instance, armies now do morale damage and collateral damage. So this is a standard army. It does normal collateral damage, which is pretty nice. It has morale. It has health. Very similar to before. I don't know if it actually has any veterancy on top of it. Let's take a look. So where are you? Okay, just hanging out. So I don't actually see anything in terms of veterancy here. There were some things about veterancy with some of our fleets, of our ships. Yeah, we got now ship ranks. So ship ranks is basically the higher the more experience a crew has, the more effective they are in combat. So that is one thing you want to keep in the back of your head. But we'll talk about that at some other time. Armies and ships will now gain experience and rank up. They are more effective in battle the higher the level is. Galactic terrain. As you can see, there's a little icon down here. There's an environmental hazard here. Shield nullification minus 100%. So plasmas only with FTL inhibitors in this system. Basically, we're going to take a look at some point to see if we can completely annihilate the unbidden that way. Let's put it that way. The fleet manager, which is a pretty big deal. My god, this is quite something. So there's a fleet manager been added, and this is going to take some time to get used to. There's no leader attached to this, etc. We can reinforce fleets by building new ships on the fly, and they will automatically join those fleets. We can upgrade fleets automatically here. We can retrofit stuff. That automatically changes it to the next version of the game. We can add a fleet design to this fleet. And whenever we hit the reinforce button, basically new stuff will be added to that fleet automatically from our shipyards, which is rather nice. This is going to take some serious time getting used to. Basically, 2.0 is a completely new game. Technologies have been reworked in new tiers. So what we're actually going to do here is we're going to go and start a new game with the United Nations of Earth. And one thing that's actually really cool is that if we go to our science department and we check our... it doesn't really matter what we go for here. If we go to our research tab, we'll see that nuclear missiles, mass drivers, and I think lasers, although lasers are they part of physics? It could be that they're part of physics. One moment. Yeah, so physics. Yeah, so red lasers are also already developed. And there's a bunch of new technologies as well, like reactor booster, basic science lab. You get a whole bunch of starting tech right off the get-go that you wouldn't get before. So basically, they assume that if you have mastered FTL, that you know how bombs and lasers work. Let's put it that way. You also get armor right off the bat. I also think you get basic shields. I think, yeah. So you get basic deflectors as well. So you have a little bit of flexibility there when it comes to your technology. Technologies have been reworked in 5 tiers, and many have their base costs changed. Atmospheric restoration's been changed. They've added modular engineering technology. There's a whole bunch of additional technologies been added. Will to power has been removed, so I think that is the orbital mind control laser, as well as orbital hydroponics have been removed, so you're going to need to do a little bit better when it comes to your planetary management when it comes to food, so please be aware of that. Wormhole stabilization has been added, gateway activation has been added, and gateway construction has been added as well. We got 2 new traits. Let's take a look at them. Okay, let's quickly pop back in. So we got 2 new traits called tradition and quarrelsome. So those are negative and positive modifiers. So let's take a look at traits here. So we've got quarrelsome, output of unity reduced by 10%. It's a -1 cost. And we've got... which one was it again? Traditional, right? Yeah. Where are you? Traditional. So it's a -1 on your points. And it increases unity output by 10%, which is really nice. Spaceports we already talked about. Okay, some of the buildings were converted into starbase buildings. We will talk separately about that. Pirates will now spawn in random systems. That is rather cool. So let's quickly load back into our game and take a look at how that works. Pirates are all over the place. They will spawn randomly. I don't think they spawn in the first 20 years of the game, which makes life really easy. But if you are somewhere in space and you haven't controlled a single system, then pirates will most likely spawn there and cause problems. Edicts. In the past, edicts worked the following way. So... policies and edicts. So we had our edicts that would work on a empire-based level, which is rather interesting. Edicts now all have a upfront cost and duration rather than being able to be toggled off. So in 1.9, you could just easily toggle them on and off and see how that worked, whereas in 2.0, if we quickly go back and go to our policies and edicts, these cost resources up front. So we need to pay 225 here, and that would basically mean that we get a bunch of additional resources. There's also the Unity ambitions, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. Game setup has now been changed, so let's quickly pop back towards the main menu in both of our builds, in both 1.9 as well as 2.0. So let's quickly pop in here. Let's grab TARS. We can't use TARS for some reason. Let's put this one. So if we go back to 1.9, we'll see that there's a bunch of stuff here. Primitive civilizations, all this stuff, crisis strength, difficulty, blah, blah, blah. Allowed FTL type has obviously now been removed. Advanced neighbors, etc. If we go back to 2.0, however, there is basically a box now that allows us to scroll up and down. Tech tradition costs, there is now a slider for that. Crisis strength was already there. Mid-game start year. This controls the earliest year that the mid-game events such as machine uprisings and a horde crisis can occur. That's rather interesting. Endgame is basically endgame crises and Fallen Empire Awakening, so that has now been changed as well. Hyperlane density, so it goes from 0.5 to 5.0. Abandoned gateways, we can crank all of this stuff up completely, and we'll take a look at it, what it actually looks like. Let's take a look here at the hilarity. Okay, let's just quickly observe. And let's see what the insanity looks like. Yeah, exactly. Every single is connected to everything around it at this particular setting, which is rather crazy. And it should basically fix a lot of the issues that people have with choke nodes. Because if we, for instance, go to a new game, we select an empire. We can select the garbage patch. And we set all this stuff to 0.5 and 0 on wormholes. We have choke nodes galore, basically. So every single area is almost impossible to get to due to the amount of choke nodes that are pretty much everywhere due to the hyperspace generation stuff. Okay, let's take a look here. New events for gaining additional precursor artifacts, which is rather nice. We can actually go... I don't think we can actually take a look at that, so that is a bit of a shame. What we are going to do is... Am I on the right game here? Yes, I am. Okay, so let's just quickly go in here. Yeah, okay. So, added new precursor stuff. You know, start with your home stage system explored, which makes sense. War philosophy now controls whether or not you can freely make claims on other empires. So, basically, if we go into our policies and we go to war philosophy, basically we can claim any system we want. We have new casus belli here as well, so aminosity, casus belli on rivals is replaced with ideology, which allows us to enforce our ethics on them. That's interesting. Claiming other systems is only allowed during defensive wars, and claiming systems is not allowed during defensive wars at all. So you cannot have this if you are not a fanatic militarist. So sadly for the Commonwealth of Man, that's not the case. No longer possible to trade star charts with other empires. War philosophy, yeah, that's what I talked about. That broken planets are now their own planet class. Interesting. There's a bunch of stuff about the prefab nations. Add a new component, reactor booster with 3 levels and accompanying tech. So if we quickly go into the ship builder, there should be a new thing here. Yeah, there's an advanced booster reactor that increases power generation. So if you want to add a new shield here, then you can totally do that. I'm not entirely sure what these dark matter reflectors are. I will need to take a look at that because I've never seen these before. Maybe they are from the Enigmatic Fortress. I do not know. So don't flip your shit just yet. Mineral processing technology now gives you plus 2,000 mineral storage, which is nice. Out of the new Corvette section. Interesting. So if we go into our Corvette designs. Oh, there's now 3. Interesting. Oh, there's a point defense Corvette now. Oh, that's cool. And a new tier 3 artillery, by the way. So let's just auto-complete this design. And let's put some Stormfire autocannons in here. But yeah, you now have a super early way of taking down enemy ships. Or at least enemy missiles. So you no longer need to wait on destroyers. Added the resource replicator building and accompanying late game tech. So let's quickly pop into Unity. Let's go to a building. Let's build something. Let's see if we can find the stupid thing. That's a stronghold. Where are you? Resource replicator. So resource replicator. Can we? No, we can't. So the resource replicator costs 50 energy a month and generates 30 minerals a month, which is kind of nice. It's a better return on investment than trading with the enclaves. So that is really good. Also, Einstein is rolling his Wraith, so that's kind of cool. Armor has been reworked completely. It's no longer a damage reduction modifier, but a separate source of hit points. So we go to our fleet bar here. we can see that there's now 3 bars here rather than just 2. And they illustrate the shield, armor, and hull. So please be aware of that. Most weapons have been reworked. Weapons can deal additional or reduced damage to hull points, armor, and shields. Damage is first applied to shields, then armor, and lastly hull. So we quickly go back into 1.9 and we quickly check this stuff out. So let's just quickly load into a base game. Where are you? Yeah, we can go into the High Terran Empire. That's not an issue. So as you can see here, there were 2 bars here rather than the 3 in 2.0. So that's a pretty big deal to say the least. So let's take a look. Leaders now cost 200 energy to hire instead of 50 influence. So in 1.9, if we wanted to get a leader, and we could basically get one for an amount of influence. In 2.0, however, this has now been changed. So see if we can get a leader on here. They now cost energy. And depending on which one it is, it obviously costs more or less energy. So we're also running capacity boosters for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why that is, but you get the general idea. Missiles have been completely reworked. All missiles now use the guided slot and ignore shields completely. Excuse me? Okay, hold on. Let's take a look here. What's this? The guided slot. So this is a guided slot, I guess. So let's put some wormhole missiles in here. 100% shield penetration, 100% shield penetration, and 100% shield penetration. That's nice. So you will need armor on that to basically counter that sort of thing. So that's kind of cool, I guess. You will now begin the game with other shenanigans. Becoming Federation president now requires an empire to own at least 10% of the Federation's planets. That makes sense. Only science ships staffed by scientists can now enter systems that lack complete intel. So basically, in the past, what you would do is, you would basically grab your Corvettes and just split them up into multiple ships and just move them around and try to explore. Now you need to basically send in, like, we wouldn't be able to send. Okay, interesting. So let's take a Corvette. We should be able to do that. Transfer ships. So that is a Corvette. For some reason, it can move in there, probably because of jump drive technology. So only science ships with staff added force disparity mechanics. We will talk about that later in a separate video. Resettlement now costs energy instead of influence. This is yet another example of costs being moved around in the past. In 1.9, this costs influence. So that's a pretty big deal. Basic level 0 farms, mines, and power plants have been removed. Interesting. Level 1 buildings can now be built on colonies. That's nice. Ship upkeep now 1% of minerals and 0.5 in cost of energy. Interesting. Xenophobe ethics now just reduce starbase influence costs by 20% and claim costs by 10%. So actually, let's take a look at this. So let's quickly pop back towards the main menu. And let's build a new empire. Let's go back to 1.9 in this particular case. So what is in 1.9, if we go to our ethics. So in 1.9, xenophobe ethics now reduce starbase influence costs and claim costs by 10%. So xenophobic in the past, that's this one. So would basically give you rivalry influence gain by 30% and border range plus 30%. And obviously, since the border range system has been completely reworked, that no longer applies. So it's now starbase influence costs been reduced and claim influence costs has been reduced, which is nice. Spiritualist ethics have been changed as well. Increase unity output by 10% and reduce it cost by 5. And 1.9, that basically changed unrest by -15 and governing ethics attraction by +15%. And so, like I said, monthly unity has now been increased and edict cost has been reduced. So that's actually really nice. That's a little bit different. We'll talk about that once I wrap my head around it. Buff Shadow Council to 75%, -75% influence election cost. Interesting. Driven assimilators can now Allows cyborgs to procreate. They do not need food. Successfully assimilating a pop as a driven assimilator now generates 1 month worth of unity and society research. Wow. Okay, that's pretty crazy. Driven assimilators can now research most genetic techs. Driven assimilators can now derive assault and defense armies from cyborg pops. Servitor morale. This is a lot of stuff that has to do with Synthetic Dawn. Updating per... Okay, Rogue Servitor and Assimilator can now uplift species. Corporate Dominion Civic now increases trading hub energy output instead of plus 10% credits. Interesting. So Corporate Dominion. So if we go into here and we go into our civics, where is Corporate Dominion? Corporate Dominion, where are you? There you are. So trading hubs now produce an additional energy and starts with base trading technology already unlocked, which means that you can put private colony ships. That's nice. Inwards Perfection no longer increases monthly influence by 1, but increases edict duration time by 10%. By the way, I'm not even halfway through all this stuff. There's quite a lot to go through. Planetary Unification Technology now increases monthly unity plus 5. I think in the past that was plus 10%, I think. Or no, Planetary Unification Technology was plus 1 influence, from what I can remember. Distinguished Admiral Civic no longer increases evasion or fire rate, but increases Admiral level cap by 2. Interesting. There's a bunch of traits. We don't need to go over these. Robust trait gene costs reduced from 6 to 4. Increases pop output by 5%. That's nice. Fertile also increases unity output by 10% and other species happiness by 5. Eager and new boots. That's all Synthetic Dawn. A bunch of technology stuff. Tradition cost is now based on the number of owned planets and systems, whereas in the past that was based around pops, as well as planets and systems. Reach for the Stars expansion no longer affects colonization influence cost, but reduces star-based influence cost by 10%. So this is actually a rather interesting one. Let's quickly pop into our setup here, and let's do the same thing for one of our other games. Let's go for this one again. So in 1.9, exploration, the courier network would reduce the amount of tradition costs because by the amount of planets that you have. Whereas in 2.0, this is the effect with colonies reduced by 20%. It's exactly the same. Hold on. Did I misread this? Oh, it's reach for the stars. Oh, okay. Star-based influence cost is reduced by 10%, whereas in 1.9, frontier outposts, which are no longer in the game, systems count as half the regular distance. Galactic ambitions, which is star-based capacity in 1.9. In 1.9, that was frontier outpost upkeep reduced by 50%. It increases the star-based capacity by 2 now, so that's rather nice. Domination now affects demand, tribute, and vassalization diplomatic actions. So in 1.9, the war demand was reduced for subjugation, whereas in 2.0, it unlocks diplomacy options. So purity, which we do not have, never surrender purity tradition, prosperity. So let's go to 1.9. Administrative operations reduces star-based upkeep by 10%. So that was this one, was building upkeep by 10%. That's nice. Transstellar corporations no longer unlocks private colony ship, but increases the amount of energy plus 5%, and trading hubs get boosted as well. Trading hubs seem to be rather powerful, I'm not gonna lie. A nice way to boost your energy income, which in combination with the new energy to matter building is rather cool. Not gonna lie. Supremacy adopt effect no longer increases border range. So in 2.0, that is now star-based capacity is increased by 2, and star-based upgrade cost has been reduced by 20%. So that is nice. The Supremacy Finisher effect no longer increases fire, but instead unlocks War Doctrine policies. So actually, for fun, let's actually take a look at that. Let's give us all the unity here. So we now have access to War Doctrines. And War Doctrines are in here. There are many ways to basically, we can get bonuses based on what our War Doctrine is. So if we have Defense and Depth, we get fire rates increased within our own territory. Ships will disengage from combat easier. And also emergency FTL damage risk has been reduced. Rapid deployment, sublight speeds, and weapon range increased. And no retreat basically increases fire rate all up the crazy town level. And disengagement chance has been reduced to 0. And emergency FTL cooldown down to 50%. Basically, this is your I am not going to go anywhere sort of territory. Polytechnic education has been changed. So that was this one. No, this one. A leader experience gain has been increased to 25. It was 35 before, from what I can remember. 33 even. Ascension perks. We already took a look at that. Crisis. Reduce the chance of contingency crisis triggering. Okay. Contingency now uses particle and tachyon lenses instead of arc emitters. I'm pretty sure they already added that in 1.9.3. Contingency occupied planets are now left without an owner upon liberation to prevent border gore. If you have Synthetic Dawn, you can spawn 5 fallen empires in a huge galaxy. And then there's a whole bunch of additional stuff. That's kind of cool. AI. Okay, let's go with all the cool shit. Okay, let's get to all the fun stuff. So, expansion features. Colossus. So, we are in the 2.0 build. So, let's take a look here at our Colossus. That is the wrong version, I'm afraid. So, the Commonwealth of Man. Did we already break it? That's probably because it's the wrong version of the game. So, there is the Eradicator. Oh, yeah, there she is. So, yeah, this is now a thing. Let's take a look at what this Colossus can do. Yeah, now we're talking. So, the Colossus is a new ship design, which every single species pack has a different type of, as in a different model. And you'll need an Ascension perk for it, and you need to build a special thing on your starbase for it. So, let's speed things up. Charging weapon. We're almost there. Oh boy. Here we go. It's taking like over a year for it to charge up, by the way, I'd like to point out. And it's pretty crazy. 61%. In the meantime, we can also talk about the Titan, which is just floating around over there, which is a new type of ship. And interesting, it has something that has not been in the game since 1.2 or 1.3. Oh, here we go. And come on. Give me that beauty. Firing weapon. Oh, here we go. I like how it has a spool up for firing the weapon as well as charging the weapon. Like, you can't charge the weapon whilst on the go. And this takes friggin' forever to destroy a planet. So, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I think last planet standing, or the Highlander challenge, is gonna be exactly that. Okay. Normal speed. There she is. And the planet goes bye-bye. Yeah, that'll do. That'll do. Cool. So that should spawn with a bunch of additional resources and that sort of thing. So let's quickly go into our ship designer for this. So the Colossus comes with its own type of weapon. In this case, we have the Planet Cracker. It has a bunch of different ones as well. Basically, a lot of cool stuff. We'll go over these in a separate video. Then we have the Titan. I already touched on them a little bit. So I'm running the humanoids back here. Let's just get these bad boys out of here. Somewhere a little bit. There we go. So this is the battleship. This is the cruiser. And this is the Titan. Now the Titan comes with its own special weapon called the Perdition Beam. And it can go across here. That's this one. It looks pretty badass. I am not going to lie. This is pretty amazing. And yeah, basically it one-shots battleships, which is kind of nice. You know what also one-shots battleships? It is these bad boys. This is the ion cannon. So the ion cannon, it has a military power of 5,000 and one-shots battleships because it has its own type of Perdition Beam. Ascension Perks, we already talked about this. Civics. Life-seeded Civic has been added, and this is a pretty big one. So let's have a chat about this. So Civics, ethics. So we've got life-seeded. So what life-seeded does is it spawns your species on a size 25 Gaia world, and you can only live on Gaia worlds, basically. It's pretty awesome if you want to play a one-planet challenge, but the Galactic Force Projection Ascension Perks has been nerfed into the ground and no longer gives you 200 fleet power. It only gives you 80, which has its own issues, but the balancing has changed a little bit as well. So we can also go for Post-Apocalyptic, which is this one, but baptized by nuclear fire. Tomb world habitability plus 70%, and our leaders live longer because all of that delicious radiation. And then finally we have barbaric despoilers, if we can find them. Where are you? Barbaric despoilers. They basically can kidnap hops and basically turn them into prisoners with jobs on a relatively early level. So that's definitely there. Unity ambitions, we kind of touched on that earlier on in the video. Let's quickly pop back and forth. So Unity ambitions are super powerful things that unlock relatively late in the game. I think it's once you have the free Ascension perk. Once we go into policies and edicts here. So we got ambitions. So and they cost the same amount of Unity that you would normally pay for a Unity perk, basically. And it never changed afterwards. So you got Scientific Revolution, Desperate Measures, Fortress Proclamation, Architectural Renaissance, Hearts and Minds, Omnifarious Acquisition, Emporia's Mineral Production plus 33% is a huge deal for 23 years. And the Grand Fleet, of course, which increases naval capacity by 20% in ship upkeep. Sadly, this is not permanent. It's kind of how it would work with the toggle on and off, so you do need to reset that every once in a while. But 20 years is a long-ass time. Then there are Marauders. Let's quickly see if we can observe. See if we can find any. Yeah, there are some Marauders over here. So we got this Marauder system, which is basically a whole fortress all by itself. This is a new species. They will not venture out of their own space, and they're basically similar to enclaves, where you can hire them to ruin other people's days, which is kind of cool, to say the least. Also, these guys are in a black hole for some reason, which makes this even more interesting to take them down. They can also turn into, at some point in the game, they can awaken, and under the leadership of a great Khan, and it's basically a mini crisis. We will talk about that in a separate video. Psionic assimilation. It is now possible for empires to have completed psionic assimilation to basically make other species psionic, which is rather nice. Do we have any new advisors? No, we do not. That is a bit of a shame, though. I kind of would have liked new advisors. And in terms of the patch notes, that is pretty much it. There's lots of smaller stuff regarding triggers, mod stuff, some performance-related things. There's 10 new achievements, hundreds of new bug fixes, which is also a really big deal. But it's pretty much it for this one. We'll see how this is all going to turn out. Apocalypse is, I believe, available for $20 and available on Thursday, the 22nd of February, 2018. I'm going to leave you here for today. We will do some more videos later, of course. But yeah, this has been an interesting one. Thanks so much for watching, and if you like this new concept, going back and forth between different versions with the patch notes, hey, we can always continue doing it like this. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take good care of yourselves, and as always, each other.